Hello and welcome. I'm Donna from Roots and Rain Yarns, and I'm just going to start today's video with just maybe a little bit of a backup, of an introduction. You may have joined me here from Instagram, in which case you'll know who I am. And what I'm here to chat to you about. But if you found me just through YouTube or through another link, my name is Donna. I'm from Roots and Rain Yarns, and I'm a natural yarn dyer here from Ontario, Canada. So if you're joining me for the first time, then on YouTube, then welcome. If you're back again on YouTube, this is my second installment on YouTube. I made the jump, I guess, or took the plunge last week from IGTV. I've had a lot of fun on Instagram, on IGTV, leaving videos, making videos, but it was time for me to make a little bit of a jump over to YouTube where I can have a little more time because you'll see probably from time to time I will look up, and I'm looking up at a timer. I do tend to chatter a little too much for the allowable time on Instagram. So whatever way you found me, thank you very much for joining me today and welcome. So I mentioned last week when I spoke to you that I was going to do this series of videos a little differently. I wanted to talk to you and share with you some of the new things that are in my dye pots, and maybe just a few things in general that I might be doing or watching or enjoying. And I'm going to try to keep that to sort of one subject, one yarn. I think possibly what I tend to do is try to cram. I talk to you so seldomly here, and then I try to cram too much information all into one sitting. So much like last week, I'm going to talk to you about one yarn. This week's yarn is very exciting because it's a new yarn. So one yarn, and I will talk about the dyes and the plant dyes, the plant materials, that I used in each of those yarns. However, I'll only go into a little more detail, a little more depth about one of the dye plants, one of the materials. So I'm just going to jump right into the yarn. So if you've been with me for a little while now, you may know that one of the things I really try to do, and that's very important to me, and that I strive to get better at and do more of, is I try to use local yarns, Canadian yarns, small batch yarns, and small family farms. That's something that's very important to me, and then I'm working towards and striving towards all the time. So this yarn that I'm going to talk to you today about is very exciting for me. I've been working on this yarn probably for, it's probably been about a year and a half. I first met this farmer, local to me farmer, at a festival that I was doing, and she was also doing. She also had a display set up at the same festival, and we met, and I saw her yarns, and we chatted. I was lucky enough to be invited to visit her at her farm, meet her lovely animals, and then eventually get my hands on some of her beautiful yarn. So this yarn is a limited edition, and as of now, May 2021, for this next Etsy shop update, which is Sunday, May 9th at 11 a.m. Standard Time. As of now, this is a limited edition yarn. I'm hesitant to use the words or the terms one time or, this is the only time. For now, this is a one-time limited edition yarn. However, You know, if I'm lucky enough to get my hands on more of this yarn in the future, that would be great. But for now, it's a limited edition yarn. It's also a new fiber for me. It's not a new fiber for me personally as a knitter and as a dyer, but it is a new fiber that I'm adding to the Roots and Rain line or family. I haven't had this fiber before. So this yarn comes to you from a local angora goat farm, which is about 30 minutes from my home. And angora goats, if you're not familiar, angora goats are lovely, small, very manageable, very gentle, very, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but tameable goats. And they produce the most amazing, beautiful, shiny, soft, decadent mohair that you can imagine. So I will try to post a few or add a few still shots into this video. I will say, because the farmer asked me, the shepherdess asked me to make sure if I was posting pictures, to go right ahead and post pictures and share with you photos, but to let you know that we are in lockdown here in Ontario, and so although the photos that I will show or share with you have pictures of me at the farm and with the goats, their farm is closed to the public and has been closed to the public for some time. The photos that I'll share with you are from late last summer, early last fall, when we weren't in lockdown. But we are in lockdown here in Ontario. We only have essential services open to us, so the farm is not open for visitors. She does have a small farm shop that she runs some times throughout the year, but it is not currently open, and they are not accepting any visitors. So without any further chatter, let me just introduce you to this beautiful, and I keep looking down because I have a little pile of it in front of me here, but I'm just gonna pick one up and introduce it to you, and then chat a little bit more to you while you're looking at this beautiful yarn. So this absolutely lovely yarn is a limited edition mohair luxe yarn. And I'm going to bring it in a little closer, and hopefully the camera will focus on the yarn and not on me. So this mohair yarn may be a little different, and if I hold it right about there, that's the right color for you. If this is your first time joining me, you know that I'm, sorry, not your first time joining me. You may know already that I'm not a professional photographer. I'm a yarn dyer, so I do struggle a little bit with these videos, probably with the quality, sometimes with the setup, and definitely with the lighting, but I am doing my best to have some natural light today. It is very gray outside, but to give you some natural light and to show you the yarns in the most accurate lighting. Getting back to the mohair. So mohair has made a huge comeback in the knitting, crochet, the knitting, crafting, the crafting fiber community in the last few years. This mohair is probably not what you're used to seeing. Probably a lot of the mohair that you're used to seeing is spun in a quite in a different fashion. Mohair is often spun in a very fine lace weight yarn with a lot of halo and a lot of fluff. Mohair, I have found from years of working in yarn shops and teaching knitting classes, dyeing, working with knitters, I found mohair is one of those things Linen is another of those things, but mohair is definitely one of those things that people, there seems to be a love or hate relationship with mohair. And I think it's often because of that very fluffy, people either love that or maybe not so much. So this yarn definitely does have, and I'll see if I can get, it definitely does have that beautiful, fluffy, fuzzy mohair halo that you get from the Angora goats, that beautiful halo, but it is not a fluffy, fuzzy, traditional mohair yarn. So this mohair is 75% mohair from, as I said, Angora goats, and 25% fine wool. And the fine wool content of this yarn is from a Canadian, Ontario, Charolais Dorset cross. And what the wool does in this yarn, and I think in many mohair yarns, what the sheep's wool does is give that mohair more memory. So mohair on its own can often be very heavy and weighty and drapey. So you may knit a mohair, an entire 100% mohair sweater, and it would be very heavy and weighty and drapey and perhaps not bounce back. And as you wear it over time, it may stretch and stretch out. So if that's been your experience with mohair, possibly it was because it was 100% mohair. Mohair on its own, as I said, is a very weighty, heavy fiber, which the flip side of that makes it very drapey and soft and luxurious. So by taking 75% mohair, we get a really high mohair content. So we have lots of beautiful halo and that fantastic sheen and luxury that mohair is known for. But by adding the 25% wool, we give that yarn some memory, enough memory, quite a bit of memory and bounce and lightness and airiness. And the Dorset yarn is very light and bouncy. So it really just helps to make a beautiful, balanced, beautiful yarn. So this yarn is fingering weight. It is a plied yarn. So again, it's not your traditional fuzzy, hairy mohair. And if I hold it right about there, that's going to give you the best light. So again, a limited edition mohair luxe yarn, fingering weight. These are 100-gram skeins, and this is a smaller amount of yarn than I would normally dye and bring to you. So what I've chosen to do this time, rather than to dye, 10 or 15 colors of yarn, I've chosen to dye fewer shades, fewer colors of yarn, but more skeins per color or per batch. I'm hoping what this allows, as a knitter, I know the frustration of buying yarn or trying to buy yarn from a small dyer, and I want to buy a sweater's worth, or I want to buy 3-4 skeins or whatever it is for a big project or a bigger shawl, and there being 1 left or 2 left. So what I've done is I've dyed more skeins per color and less colors. Hopefully this allows you to get the color that you want and to have more sweater quantities available. So what I've also done with this yarn, because it is a very special, beautiful yarn, and I really wanted to make it beautiful and special. So I've dyed, as I said, 4 colors, and each of these colors has something that's special to me in it. So the first color that I've been showing you, is black walnut and cochineal. And I'm not going to go into depth detail about every one of the dyes I talk about today. I will talk about one, but as I said last week when I talked about field sock, I'm going to just pick out one of the dyes and talk about that one dye. So this is black walnut, an ethically sourced cochineal, and it's a beautiful, earthy, sort of toned down pink. And I'm just going to keep trying to move it around here so that you really get a good view. So the pink comes from the cochineal, and adding the black walnut just kind of tones that down and adds some brown and some warmth to that pink. What's special in this yarn to me is the black walnut. So the black walnut in this yarn, in this particular batch, and I'm actually sitting here, I keep looking out because I'm sitting here overlooking my garden. And the black walnut tree is actually my neighbor's tree, not my tree. But it's a huge, huge tree and overhangs my garden. And so I get, I'm not sure, many hundreds probably, of black walnuts falling in my yard every year. So I get them and the squirrels get them. My neighbor doesn't mind at all. So the black walnuts in here come either from my garden or actually from a huge black walnut tree in my son's backyard. So that is black walnut and ethically sourced cochineal. And I should just mention that these yarns will not have a batch. Last week when I talked to you about field sock, I gave you the batch numbers, the specific batches, so that if you wanted to look them up on Etsy, you could find the exact batch that you saw, because I get that question a lot. What was the purple yarn that you held up in this picture, or that you showed on that Instagram shot? So I tried to give you in that last one the batch numbers. These do not have a batch. As I said, they're a one-time limited edition yarn, and so they just say spring 2021. They don't have an actual batch. So if you're looking for black walnut and ethically sourced cochineal, that's the one you're gonna find on Etsy. So the next yarn is a beautiful, lovely, warm, toned down, I would call it toned down purple. More of a lilac lavender purple than a bright purple. And this yarn is Logwood and acorn. And what makes this yarn special for me is the acorn. So if you've followed me here for a while, or if you've seen pictures on Instagram, you may have seen me walking the dogs through the woods, and there's a huge old bur oak tree that I like to stop at. We like to stop at. Anybody who's with me on the walk gets dragged into that stop and collect bur acorns, or acorns from that bur oak tree. So this is logwood and acorn. And the logwood, of course, creates the purple, which actually, if you pop back to the field sock video from last week, that was the dye stuff that I chose to talk about last week. So if you'd like to know more about logwood, just pop back and have a look at that video. And the acorn is what sort of warms it up, sort of gives it that warmer or gray tone to the purple. So logwood and acorn. So the next couple of yarns, like I said, I picked just 4 colors, and I was trying to decide what colors, first of all, I wanted to dye, what colors were special, what I could use from my garden, or that was really sort of local, what I have left, because here in Ontario we're just heading into spring, so much of what I'm dyeing with is left from last year. It's dried, it's frozen, but I still wanted it to be special. Last time that I was here, I talked to you a little bit about podcasts I've been watching, and I finished that video and realized that I actually didn't talk about my my favorite podcast, and maybe we shouldn't play favorites, but you know, we all have favorites. So probably the first podcaster that really got me watching podcasts and interested in different podcasts is Kia. So Kia, if you're watching, hello, and thank you for all your inspiration. So you can find Kia on Kia's Bod. Kia is a lovely Swedish podcaster, and we will watch Kia. We get to see beautiful scenes of her home and Sweden, and all the things that Kia is knitting and spinning and embroidering and now weaving. But the next two colors were very much inspired by Kia. So earlier this spring, Kia really dived into all things yellow. And that really made me want to do some yellow dyeing. I dye a lot of yellows, a lot of different shades of yellow. We have a lot of plants here in Canada that that we can achieve yellow dye from naturally. But I really wanted a bright yellow. Kia was spinning this and working with this really vibrant, beautiful yellow fiber. So my next yarn is completely inspired by Kia, and it is this beautiful, vibrant, and again, I'll try to get it right into the right light so that you can see how vibrant this yellow is. I wouldn't probably use the term bright, because it's not a bright yellow like a highlighter yellow or a but it's a very vibrant, sunny, happy, feel-good yellow. And I'll try to come in a little closer so that you can see it has that lovely, lovely halo. All of the mohair yarn has that beautiful halo and that wonderful sheen, which I really hope I'm catching. It's not just light reflecting on that yarn. I actually don't have an overhead light turned on me today, so that sheen that you're seeing is just from the daylight outside. Mohair has a natural sheen all on its own. So this yarn is marigold and chamomile. So this was definitely the last of the marigolds and chamomile from my garden from last summer. So that's what makes it special for me. It's special because it was inspired by someone who inspires me, and special because I grow quite a lot of marigold, not as much chamomile as I plan to grow and need to grow. So that's the inspiration for this beautiful yellow. And then the last color is again another yellow. I was so inspired to just get the yellow and the brightness and the spring color into my dye pots, that I chose to do two yellows. So I have two yellows, a pink and a purple. And this yellow, if I can get the light just right here for you, if I can get it to pick up just right. It seems to be doing some funny things. I'm going to keep moving around. Oh, there we go. This yellow, I would say, is a soft, buttery, warm yellow, as opposed to the bright or vibrant yellow. This is a very soft, gentle, buttery yellow, and this is just chamomile. Again, it's got that beautiful mohair sheen and that beautiful mohair halo that when you knit it, that halo is definitely comes right through. So this is chamomile, and like I said about the last one, this is the last of the chamomile from the Roots and Rain 2020 garden. So those are the four colors, and the chamomile leads me to chatting a little bit about chamomile to you. So as I said, chamomile, if you're not familiar with it, it's a great dye plant. It grows really well here in Ontario. For me, my personal gardening experience is that it doesn't overwinter here for me. I bring it in and dry it. Often with my flowers and herbs and dye plants, I will just bring them in, I tie them up and I hang them. I have a huge wooden rack that I use to hang from. And then actually you can probably even see in this room, I'm sorry about that, I realized as I was talking to you, you can probably see the fan overhead sort of making a shadow. But I have several fans in rooms around my house, and so I will try to dry most of my herbs and flowers in a room with a fan, so that just keeps some airflow. Chamomile, though, I will often tie a paper bag around because it's such tiny little flowers, and because the seeds tend to dry and fall out, and also I tend to lose it on the ground. So I will often put a paper bag around it, or I will dry it in a dehydrator. I do have a food dehydrator that I use for a lot of my dye plants. So I have some chamomile flowers here to show you. I'm hoping that I can pick them up on the screen. And if I put my hand in there, you'll see, maybe that'll give you a little idea of the scale too. So these are dried chamomile flowers. And hopefully if we put that right in there, it will pick up the chamomile flower and not just me. But you can see the size. They're tiny little flowers when they dry. And if I hold my hand in here, and if I give this one a little, if I break that up with my fingers, you can see all the tiny little seeds coming out of there. The chamomile seeds are, like a grain of salt. They're tiny little seeds. So I dry lots and lots of that chamomile and use that in my dye pots, and then of course save some of those chamomile flower heads to create, of course, the next year's dye plants. So I have a little tray here of chamomile. So this year I plan to probably grow, I would say probably probably 10 times as much chamomile as I've grown in the past. It's a beautiful plant for dyeing. It makes, of course, you can make chamomile tea. It's really beautiful for sachets and little pillows. Last year I mixed chamomile and lavender and made some sachets. I also mixed chamomile and cedar last year and made some lovely sachets to keep in with your knitting. So I've really upped my chamomile game this year. So I have this sort of everyday sort of garden variety chamomile. And then I have a few other varieties this year. So as you can see by this little pot here, if I bring this one right in, I really overplanted these pots, but that's okay. So here in Ontario, it still goes below freezing overnight. So I can't put those outside yet. They're inside right now. They're in a window, growing in the window. And I will start maybe in about 2 weeks to take those outside every day for a few hours during the day. We call that hardening off. It's just getting them a little stronger, getting them ready to be planted outside. And then probably the last week in May, maybe even the first week of June, I'll actually get to plant those out into my garden. So by that time, those plants will maybe be probably double that size. So I don't think I'm going to need to transplant those into another pot. I think they're going to be okay in these little pots, in that little pot, until they're ready to go outside. And then I'll just break this pot in a few pieces and plant them like that to make next year's dye plants. So coincidentally, I actually have been, I think I do pick this up every spring. I've heard a few other people say they kind of pick it up every spring. And I mentioned last week just sort of a few of my favorite things that weren't knitting related or weren't dye related. I actually have been working on this little embroidery piece, and it just happens to be chamomile. I must have been thinking about chamomile and about spring flowers. So I just been working on this little embroidery, really simple little chamomile embroidery. I'm just about to start the flowers, and that's just that blue pen that will wash out once it's all stitched, and just rinse that out. So I think that's all I wanted to talk to you about today. I think I've used up my time. So again, my Etsy shop update is going to be this Sunday, May 9th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And all of the yarn that I showed you today will be available in that shop update. I think I've chatted long enough today. Thank you once again for joining me. I hope you have a lovely week, and do some nice things for yourself. Maybe spend some time knitting, or maybe you'll get a chance to get out in the sunshine, spend a few minutes just doing something nice for you. So that's it for now. Take care, be well, and I will talk to you soon.